Today's video is a tour of my double biome theme park, and it's actually pretty detailed. So without further ado, let's just get on with it. We will start the tour today at the Plaza, which I have made the shopping and entertainment area of the theme park. We will go right first because it is kind of the hub of the biome. We have Scrooge's shop first, and when I was making these areas, I was really thinking of Disney World and how there is often a larger shop in an area that has kind of a theme to it, and then there will be other little kiosks or displays outside. So next to Scrooge's shop, I placed Kristoff's stall, and I styled it as kind of a rustic market area. Not only does it fit the idea of having smaller little shops outside the main shops, but it is also super convenient, and it definitely helps me remember to check Kristoff's stall every single day. When I log into the game, I'll first go check Scrooge's shop and then immediately head to the stall. One of the things I really wanted to do in this area is add a lot of green bushes and flowers. In my mind, I was thinking of the Flower and Garden Festival at Epcot and how beautiful it is with all of the different flowers, topiaries, and greenery displays. I also placed a lot of fountains throughout the area. I think one day it would be really neat to figure out how to build the Fountain of Nations, which kind of inspired me to do this. But for now, several of these smaller fountains with the flowers are just gonna have to do. Sticking with the idea of having several smaller kiosks, I placed this souvenir cart across from Scrooge's shop. I also made sure to include lots of seating, which I keep forgetting we can use to refill our energy, as well as lots of trash cans. Did you know Walt Disney himself wanted trash cans every 30 feet inside the parks? He definitely wanted to do everything he could to keep the parks as neat and tidy as possible. And still today, if you look around when you're inside the parks, there will always be a trash can within 30 feet. This next little area would actually be the main entrance to this side of the biome, and this is where I used the Figment topiary and the benches from the most recent Star Path to create a fun yet functional seating area. I also used these torches here, not because I think they fit the theme or the vibe necessarily, but because they're low enough to cast the light more where I'd like it, and also I feel like they just blend in a lot better than the wrought iron lights. I placed Remy's house in this area with another small fountain and seating area in front of it. In my mind, when I placed it here, I was really envisioning kind of an indoor theater, kind of like the Hall of Presidents at Magic Kingdom. Next to Remy's, I built my outdoor theater, and if you've watched any of my previous theme park builds, or even my theater speed build, then you'll probably already know that this has been one of my favorite builds in my valley. This time, however, I did decorate the stage to be more of a musical stage and included the piano, guitar, and the microphone. I used the palm tree banners to help hide the alley behind the curtain, and of course had to add in a popcorn machine for snacking. Back behind the stage, I have a little alley which allows access to the meadow and the mining back here. Things are a little cramped in some spots, but I did make sure to leave plenty of gaps that I'm able to get through for easy navigation. The flowers are actually very useful for making sure that there are plenty of areas that can be used for passing through while still keeping the closed off look. Next to the theater, I placed the photo booth and the easel where I imagine the silhouette drawings, which I've spoken of before in these builds because it is one of my favorite keepsakes from Walt Disney World. I used one of the light gazebos here as well, and I styled it as a gift shop where I imagine villagers could buy frames and other keepsakes for their photos and drawings. Passing to the other side of the plaza, you can see that the main path that leads to the well and down to the meadow is more narrow than it has been in some of my previous builds, and I kept it open. I did this to help the plaza flow to the meadow below, since I am essentially treating both biomes as one. When I built and decorated this side of the plaza, I was definitely thinking more of Disney Springs. If you have never been to Disney World, Disney Springs is kind of the shopping and entertainment hub. There are lots of shops there, as well as bars and restaurants. So this side of the plaza would definitely be more for the older teenagers, young adults, and adults. Next to Remy's restaurant, I placed an ice cream stand. I picture a fun date night where villagers can enjoy a nice dinner and then stop for an ice cream cone while strolling through the park. In this next area, I created a coffee stand, and I'm sure if you've watched any of my previous videos, you aren't surprised to see this, as it is one of my favorite things to build in my valley. I wanted to use the white small world pillars in this area, so I used them on either side of the counter. Gameloft, if you're watching this, we could really use some light strands on some poles or something, kind of like the flag banners, but with lights, so we could make our own lighted arches. Anyway, across from that, you'll find another little seating area surrounding another small fountain. This Mickey fountain is used in the center of this side as a focal point. I again used the tiki torches for lighting, and again, not necessarily for the design aspect, but for the color and the height of the light, because it's perfect for this little area. Woody's carousel is actually used in this area as well. I was initially going to place it in the meadow, but I had a fairly large unused space in the plaza that I needed to fill, and the meadow was kind of starting to feel a little bit cramped. So I used the carousel up here, and I imagine that it is more of an antique attraction versus a huge ride that the villagers are going to want to seek out to ride. For the teenagers and young adults, I built an arcade. I really wanted to use some of the Toy Story items, so I used them in this area to decorate the arcade. I also finally got the claw machine, so I'm super excited to be able to include that. I also included a little snack bar in this area, and I used the balloon arches at the entrance instead of the Mickey arches I typically use, because I'm actually trying to incorporate some new and different items that I don't normally use into my builds. And that's actually going to wrap up the plaza portion of the theme park, so let's head down to the second half in the meadow. The peaceful meadow is where I put all of my rides, so this is more of the thrill-seeking portion of the theme park. This is also where I built my roller coaster, and I did do a speed build on this, so if you watched that, then you already knew I did this, but you may have found that speed build was a little bit confusing. So before we go any further into the meadow, let's do a walkthrough of the actual roller coaster. This first section you see would be the actual ride the villagers would get on and get strapped into after scanning their magic band. You can imagine the robot is the shooters for the villagers in the front to shoot the asteroids coming at the ship, or a steering wheel to actually control the ship. The red bench acts as a bumper to the ship, and the Mickey lamps would be the taillights. Lastly, the Wally bike racks act as kind of a stopper at the end of the track. For the actual track, I use the asphalt path, so let's just travel down the path of the ride. As I'm sure you already know, it's really hard to build angles and curves in Disney Dreamlight Valley, especially if you're trying to be mindful of the item limits. So I did my best to make the corners curved, where you can imagine it's maybe a bit of a loop that maybe goes up in the air a little bit without using a lot of items. So you definitely have to use your imagination a bit on this build, but I still think it's pretty cute. If you did watch the speed build of this roller coaster, then you know that this build was inspired by a train station build by Cupcake is Gaming, which I will link in the description box down below. She used these hot cocoa stands in her build style this way, and I loved it so much I recreated that as the first scene that the villagers pass on the ride. As you're riding on the roller coaster, I'm kind of imagining it's like you're traveling through the different lands of the theme park, and I didn't necessarily style the displays in any particular kind of land. I just used a lot of different items that I wanted to fill in the gaps along the path. So for this next area, I used the balloons from Up and some of the other balloons offered in the game, and some fun lamps for a different lighting effect. Then of course you see the rides in the park as you travel through, such as the Dumbo ride, which just makes the villagers excited for their next adventure in the park. This is where things probably start to get a little bit confusing. Obviously, there's going to have to be some places where villagers can cross the roller coaster in order to make the theme park flow. So as you can see, the cart can't get through right here, it's fenced off. That's because on the other side of the fence, I made a bridge. So you imagine the track goes under the bridge, under the Ferris wheel, and then comes right over here where there is another curve, back out, and another straight angle. The ride does give villagers a pretty decent view of the beach and a little bit of a view of the Wizard of Oz before coming to another curve. And then there is another bridge that goes to the Glade of Trust. You'll then loop around the back of the castle, and then more bridge that's actually a little bit tricky to get through if you're following the track, but Then you get to the end of the roller coaster with the stops. Obviously, the roller coaster isn't the only way to get around this area of the theme park. If you go straight down from the plaza, you can walk through the area, and here you can see the other side of the roller coaster and the entrance to a little rest area. I added in a couple little snack carts and a picnic table. And then by the pond, I put some fountains to kind of help incorporate the pond into the design, so it really felt like it belonged in this area. I added in a couple bathrooms as well. Going back to the center of the meadow, you can see that I used the blue clock tower, which is an item that I knew I wanted to use down in this area. It's actually a really beautiful item, and I definitely don't use it near enough. Like I did up in the plaza, I used the small world pillars to create the arches instead of just the Mickey arches, and I did do something that I don't normally do in my meadow builds and kind of closed off the entrance to the beach and put the Ferris wheel here. I did this for a couple of different reasons. First of all, I needed to for the tunnel to go underground for the roller coaster, but also having the Ferris wheel at your eyesight as you're walking down from the plaza or up from the beach is actually a really pretty sight, especially at night. Upon entering the other side of the meadow, you'll find a little bar area that I created where the parents can take a little breather while the kids ride the teacups. I again tried to add some decor around the pond to help make it look like it belongs in the area. Behind the pond, I used some of the Stitch spaceships to build a little kiddie ride. I placed the well near my house to make travel quick and easy, and by placing it in this area, I also have easy, direct access to the plaza. The last little area that I built in the meadow is accessible from the right side of the entrance and includes another queue for the roller coaster, as well as another little rest area that includes some lockers for storage, as well as Goofy stall. This is by far the biggest build I've ever done, which is probably obvious since I did use 2 biomes to complete it. I had a lot of fun combining both the plaza and peaceful meadow and building a larger theme park that is both functional and beautiful. I've definitely been using my plaza a lot more since moving the store and the restaurant back up there, and having my house in the meadow ensures that I am visiting that area frequently as well. Since finishing up this build, I've definitely enjoyed the rides and other theme park items from the Star Path much more than I had been in my previous layout. I'd like to take just a moment to thank my posse, my channel members. You are amazing humans. If you're interested in becoming a channel member, you can get more information by clicking the join button below. This is all totally new to me, and I'm putting a lot of thought into my perks, so I do expect things to change a little bit and things to be added. And I'm also definitely interested in any suggestions from you all, so let me know those in the comments below. Either way, whether you're watching, commenting, liking, subscribing, it all matters, and your support means everything to me. Anyway, that's all I had for you today, friends. Until next time, peace out.